I told you guys it wouldn't be too long before my next Monster Hunter video. I decided that I would play more Ryze first because Palamutes are awesome. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Trevor. I go by TheMrTrails. Welcome to the channel. I'm a Dauntless main with about 3,500 to 4,000 hours in the game at this point. In comparison, I now only have about 30 hours in the entire Monster Hunter series. And with this dynamic and being a complete noob to the series, I've been detailing my progress in the games with you guys. A request of the previous video was that more actual gameplay was desired, so here you go. But be warned, again, I have very little experience in Monster Hunter, so this gameplay will be hot garbage. If you are used to watching people with thousands of hours in the game and are going to be triggered by my horrible gameplay by comparison, you should just stop watching now. But not before you drop a like on the video, you know what I'm saying? If you can appreciate the journey to becoming better at the game or want to keep up with what's going on in the free-to-play alternative, Dauntless, then consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be trying to post Monster Hunter at least once a month, but the more support the videos get, the more subscribers, the more likes, then obviously I'll make it more of a priority. But let's go ahead and get into it. I've been playing Longsword so far in my Monster Hunter Ryze journey, and the next monster I wanted to take down with it was the Barioth. One thing that has been consistent of these videos so far is people telling me how bad I am at the weapon I'm using. And like, duh. Again, you're used to watching people with thousands of hours in the game, and I am a complete noob. And not just a complete noob playing rather casually. And some of the comments were straight up demanding me to watch a weapon guide before playing more. It's one thing to suggest it to make my gameplay experience easier, but it's another thing to straight up demand it from me. And you know what? I'm not going to this time. As you guys like to point out, the Monster Hunter series came out around 2 decades ago. And you know what wasn't around 2 decades ago? YouTube. So how do you think the OG Monster Hunter players learned how to play a weapon? This might be a crazy concept, but they actually played the video game to learn how the video game works. And you know what? I want to do the same. Does watching a weapon tutorial make you better at the game faster? Absolutely. Is it a requirement? Absolutely not. I did hop into the training area to learn a couple more moves that the weapon has to offer, and you'll see over the course of the 5 hours of gameplay we'll be going over that I did at least somewhat improve at the weapon. So you've been watching me take on the Barioth here, and you should have seen that I was extremely keen about trying to get the parry attack to land. The sword in Dauntless has a parry special, being the Avenging Overdrive. The key difference in functionality between them is that the parry in Dauntless is pretty much immediately after you hit the button, whereas you sort of have to get hit during your own attack animation in Monster Hunter here. It is kind of awkward to get the timing down, but it is quite a bit easier than the timing for the dodge. Also, another thing, I think this is just a me thing, but my special sheath actually had no default key binding at all. I believe someone said it's usually on the second mouse thumb button, but the way I have my mouse configured most of the time doesn't have that button as its own button. So I guess rather than trying to fix it, the game just didn't give me a keybind for it. Random junk aside, as far as the Barioth itself went, I found it a bit interesting just how stacked it kind of is. It gets rocky armor, and on top of that has the ability to inflict poison, fire, and sleep status conditions. We do have armored behemoths in Dauntless, but none that get access to that kind of utility. The fight was pretty straightforward though, no deaths to be seen here. After defeating this first Barioth, I took on another one, but this time in the multiplayer, or at least it was supposed to be multiplayer because I fought it for about 15 minutes solo before another person showed up, which I know the game said that the monsters were a bit tougher overall in multiplayer, but I figured if I was solo that it would be a solo strength fight still, but it sort of did still feel upscaled for like more people. In Dauntless it would have still been a solo scaled fight, but I guess you're kind of screwed if your teammates don't arrive in this game. Anyway, the fight was pretty much the same, it just took a bit longer. And after this I had a bit of a rampage to deal with, and to be honest, I'm kinda surprised that I didn't fail it. For this it spits you into the final area of your stronghold, but I just assumed it was a different new area that was protecting the gate. So because I thought this, my first barricade actually went down before I even started fighting anything for real. So I probably should have failed that, but with my supreme ballista aim and a crap load of Monka W's, I was able to hold on and repel the horde. Perhaps part of that confusion was that a lot of this hunting was done days apart from each other, and I was kind of nervous about fighting a new monster for the first time in the 4-star ranks, having not hunted anything else earlier in the day. So I would kind of kill something in an effort to warm up, and then I would just kind of not want to fight something else after. This wasn't the game's fault in any way, I just personally haven't wanted to be on my computer at all that much recently. So the previous few hunts were all involved in that sort of thing, and continuing that trend was when I met up with my old friend Pukei-Pukei. This actually went extraordinarily well. I killed the thing in under 10 minutes. Considering I was hunting once or twice a week at this point with very little experience and having no recollection of actually fighting Pukei in World, I think this was pretty good. If you watched my second video on World, you might remember me airing my absolute hatred for roaring. Like, am I really that scared of the things just screaming? But roars is actually a reason I've been absolutely loving Longsword, because I can just parry the roar and stay attacking, which I did a few times in this Pukei fight. Quite marvelous. There was a Bishaten in the area that got involved, which thus far is probably the most annoying monster to do these riding on them fights with because of the long windups. But yeah, the rest of the fight was probably what you'd expect. I got poisoned a few times, I had to heal a few times, then kept smacking. Pukei, again, was supposed to be a warm-up fight for the other 4-star quests, but again, I just didn't want to hunt anything after. But a few days ago, I decided enough was enough and I was going to face my fears and take on the Rathian. And I have got to say, I was super disappointed by Rathian. Having played through the initial portion of the World story, I was prepared for Rathian to be this big bad dragon that was about to put me in my place. I thought it was about to cause me some severe pain, both mentally and physically, but I hadn't yet fought Rathian in World, so I was just really nervous going into fighting this thing. But it turns out that this fear was completely irrational, because Rathian was probably the biggest pushover of any of the monsters that I hadn't fought yet. This fight took me 11 minutes, and it hit me a grand total of 5 times. But you want to know what's sad about that, though? The sand sharks in the combat areas hit me 4 times. I wish I was kidding. With my first time killing it, going like that, I wouldn't be surprised if I found Rathian to be the first monster I get a damageless run against. To be fair to it, I wasn't going for as many parries as most of the other monsters, but it was sort of from a lack of it doing what I would consider very parryable attacks with my limited amount of skill. But yeah, it was like really easy to me. So Rathian here was still the only monster that I killed on that day, but then the next day I decided I was not only going to take out the next monster, but also the urgent quest that would follow. The next monster in this case was the Barioth. Credit where credit is due. Barioth was a bit of a challenge given my lack of experience. The best way for me to describe it is it's very active in comparison to the other monsters thus far. So active that the first time it fled, I hadn't leveled up my special meter yet. A bit of a theme from this fight was that the more I saw a certain attack, the more I took damage from it, like the hip check move. I originally didn't get hit by it at all, but after seeing it 3 times, I started getting hit by it every time. And just a side note, I don't really ever recall the game specifically telling me how to remove frost status, but I was able to correctly infer that it was a nullberry. It may have done it on the boggies, but I don't really remember. But unfortunately, I will have to give Barioth the spotlight for making me faint. It was caused by a bit of an unfortunate circumstance. I called my Palamute to ride because I had just taken damage a couple of times and I wanted to heal, but then the Barioth flew up, which made me cower in fear. Stupid mechanic, by the way. But because I cowered in fear, the Palamute call was cancelled, so I was just sitting there wondering why I wasn't riding my Palamute yet. But after that, I was able to avoid it going under half health for the rest of the fight, and I was able to take it down. And you probably know what's coming next. It's Magnamalo time. Structurally, it seems kind of similar to the Barioth, but it's on even more crack. And it introduces me to Hellfire, which I think is a pretty interesting take on a status effect. Magnamalo is pretty much what I expected Rathian's fight to be, something to really make me realize just how unskilled at the game I am. Just as I caught up with it after it ran away for the first time, from full HP, it brought me to my knees. It smacked me with its tail, I dodged its next attack too early, and I was already on the ground for it to deal the finishing blow. But I'm happy to report, though, that this was still my only feint in the hunt. I guess I haven't had that monster yet that's so good that it can make me fail the hunt. It was close to killing me a second time, and more than once. During what I would guess to be its enraged period, he goes kinda crazy. It got me to about 20% HP 3 times, so I do have to say that it's no joke. The combat time was about 17 minutes or so, and a good portion of this was just running around it during its enraged period, but I was rather confused when the credits actually started playing after this fight and the following cutscenes. Like, even though I never played the game before, even I knew that this wouldn't be even remotely close to the best monster in the game. But I guess this means that the actual kind of story is already done for the solo hunts? I don't really know, but what I do know is that this is a pretty convenient place to stop for this video. After this, I just sort of talked the NPCs around town, unlocked the 5-star quests, and realized this entire time I hadn't been making better gear for Meatloaf and Rift Fetcher. But that is all. Consider dropping a like for me if you enjoyed. I will probably do some more of World next. There were quite a few people asking for it, but I will either have to brush up on my insect glaive gameplay or start making long swords over there. Again, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, I do mainly post Dauntless around here, but I wouldn't mind making Monster Hunter a bigger priority if you guys are enjoying it. But I have been Trevor, I go by the Mr. Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.